Howdy ho, everyone. Welcome to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore. And my guest, Mary Barrett, had to cancel because they were having horrible storms where she lives and was losing power. So she didn't want to commit to something that might be a pain in the butt for her. So my guest tonight is Karl Sup. He is a Bigfoot researcher. So we're going to be talking about something I don't know a whole lot about, but locations wise, I will. So that'll be fun. So welcome, Karl, to the show.
Hey, everybody.
And I have to thank Sharon Day for recommending you. She's always such a great help on certain things. And I want to say I'm sorry for her loss of her fiance. And that was sad. But
Very sad.
But she's going to be filming a film here soon, and I hear that they're going to dedicate the film to her fiance.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see. I've had her on about 5 years ago. I had her on, and she is such a nice lady to visit with. So, So how did you get involved with Bigfoot research?
So that was an interesting story. So, I was always interested kind of in it, but, I figured, they're always up in Northern California or Washington State or somewhere up in there, Oregon. I never really considered the widespread distribution of them, but it was, but I'd camped and I'd hiked all over Arizona my whole life. I moved to Arizona as a kid, and and there were, and thinking back now, there was some unusual things that happened while I was, out camping, but I just kind of wrote it off as, well, that was weird, or maybe that was something X, and so forth. But now knowing what I know, I realize what that was. But in 2008, I was watching TV with my son, and one of those messing with Sasquatch commercials came on, and it was the one with the hitchhiker, where they said, "Come on, get in the car," and the guys, and I started laughing my butt off, and I turned to my 16-year-old son sitting there, just kind of, and I said, "Why aren't you laughing at that? That was hilarious." And he said, "Well, that really wasn't based in reality, so." And I said, "Really? You're 16? Are you that jaded that you can't, laugh at something that you?" And I said, not only that, but how do you know it's not real?" And he's like, "Oh, it's been proven." And I go, "I know for a fact it's never been proven." I was like, so we had to started having a discussion on it. And as I went out online, I relayed to him this camping story from 1982, where I was up on the Mogollon Rim in Arizona. And at 3 a.m. in the morning, something howled just incredibly loud, 3 guys in a tent. And we barreled out of that tent at 3 a.m. We're on the far side of a lake, and we're trying to decide whether or not just to leave everything and get the hell out of there, or what to do, and we finally convinced ourselves that it must have been a really large coyote or something, and we went back to sleep. We went back into the tent at least. It took a while to sleep, but so I told my son that story, and he said that, he said, "Oh, come on, Dad, in Arizona?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, you know what? I've never done it, but let's Google it, right?" So I Googled Arizona Bigfoot, and the first link that came up was the Bigfoot Field Research Organization. So I browsed the website. I browsed some of the Arizona sightings that they had, and we read through those. And he was like, "Huh." And then I saw a link for an audio of the Ohio Howl. I don't know if you're familiar with that thing, but it's just it's a recording that was made a while ago of a Bigfoot howling, and I listened to it. And when I did, all the hairs stood up on my arms. And my son saw that, because it was the first time since 1982 that I had heard that howl. It kind of brought back that auditory memory, and just, and so suddenly my son says, "Well, maybe there's something to it," and I said, "Look at this. They've got an expedition in 3 weeks." I said, "Why don't we go?" I said, "Worst case scenario, we'll just hang out with the bunch of crazy people, and you and I will get to go camping. It's like, well, that sounds good, you know. And I said, or we might learn something. Who knows, right?
Yep.
Their minds. So we head up there, and on the very first night of the expedition, the group split in. There was a large group, and we split into two groups on the either side of this ridge line, and the on one side of the ridge line was about 20 participants, on the other side 20, and the leader of the expedition made a call from the ridge line, and within, I want to say, probably 10 seconds of his call from the ridge line, we had a call back from the north. About 4 seconds later, another howl came back from the northwest. And then about 10 seconds after that, a call from the southwest. So from 3 different directions. And, you know, I recorded it. And I remember we're standing in the dark, and it was at that exact moment that I was like, okay, I need to understand this and figure out who they are, what they are. And that was, that's where we were. And that's what kind of got me hooked on it initially. So
apparently your fan club is here. Jamie Baker, welcome to the Paranormal Pride. Welcome Susan, Evelyn, John, Amanda, and Gary. Thank you guys all for being here. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat room, and I will ask the questions not as they come up, but as they fit in. But I will ask every question, be guaranteed of that. So, so when you said that you've witnessed Bigfoot in Arizona.
Yes.
I've been across 40. Okay.
Yep.
You know, we drive to Vegas a lot from here. And so there's some parts of that. It's like, okay, where would Bigfoot be hiding? He'd be finding him anywhere, especially, you know, along the Painted Desert, Holbrook. And after, you know, let's see, once you get towards Flagstaff, you can see where he'd be hiding.
Oh, absolutely. And further south, you know, it's the largest, Arizona has the largest stand of ponderosa pines in the world, actually. Mm-hmm. And it stretches, you know, 2/3 of the state. And it's quite dense, and there's just square miles of emptiness and woods and creeks and lots of deer, lots of elk. It's an amazing habitat for them. You know, they, of course, you know, water a lot of times, you know, but in the summertime, you know, we get a lot of rains and creeks will flow, and there's they'll especially up on the Mogollon Rim, they'll hang out near a lot of the lakes up there.
And near where there have been a lot of UFO sightings as well.
Absolutely. Not far from where Travis Walton was abducted. And I've actually been to the site, and I had the fortunate thing. I was at Travis was at the state fair. They had a you know, alien experience section at the state fair, and it was late at the night. It was maybe an hour before closing, and there was no one in that tent. There was no one in the tent for the alien exhibit, and except for Travis Walton sitting there. So I walked up, and I actually, you know, got to sit there and talk with him for an hour. And you know, honestly, I'm a pretty good judge of characters. Anybody who, you know, having talked to him for an hour and listening to his story, and, you know, just seeing the look on his face and knowing it's absolutely true. So
I agree. Yeah, we met him a couple years ago, and he was so sincere.
Yes.
And the fact that none of his story has ever changed in all these years.
Nope.
Not that it's scripted, because when he talks about it, it's always got all the same information. It's just, you can tell that he feels it every time. And, you know, and if you've seen the movie Fire in the Sky, yeah, it irritates him because some of it they changed,
right?
Made it theatrical, and which is, once you sign your name, there it goes, you know.
As if an alien abduction wasn't theatrical enough, right?
Yes, I know. And so that's one of the things, you know, when he talks about, I don't know, you just feel it. We did, we were at a paranormal conference in Iowa, and we were staff. Okay. We were staff. Yes. And he was one of the speakers. They had a panel with another one of the guys that he used to work with. And I think his name was John. Yeah. He's a truck driver. And it was amazing the questions that people had, but they were all like canned questions. They all seemed like the same. Like he probably gets this question all the time. And my daughter sent me a message and she says, make sure you ask my question. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to ask this question, because it was about the Kardashians. And I'm like, I don't want to ask this question. Everybody's going to look at me like I'm nuts. And they did. But the minute I asked the question, you saw him sit up taller, smile, and start talking about Bruce Jenner, because he loved Bruce Jenner back when he was doing all the Olympic stuff. And he started talking about it, and he became all animated. And it was like, it was a fresh of breath air for him to talk about something that wasn't being abducted.
Right.
And so, but he did tell me later on, he goes, that was my favorite question of all time.
Yeah.
So there you go. The next time you see him, ask him
okay.
the question, who is your favorite Kardashian? That's all you got to do. And then you got a half an hour of stories about the Kardashians.
I know nothing about the Kardashians.
Me either. I mean, other than I have 4 daughters, you know,
yeah.
but my kids did, you know, so they made sure I knew everything.
Sure.
But, you know, it was one of those funny things that it paid off to ask the question. So, you know, when people go, oh, it's a stupid question, you know, don't ever say that in front of me, because I'll say, oh, there's only stupid people with questions. There's no stupid question, only stupid people with questions.
Yeah, no.
I don't mean that. But
it's good. You know, I always enjoy the questions because especially people that don't know anything about, you know, Bigfoots or Sasquatch. And, you know, obviously no one knows everything about that. You know, we all have little small pieces of information and experiences that you can stitch together, you know, to really understand, you know, who and what they are, and really their, you know, longevity on this continent.
Yeah.
That way.
So in your area, you know,
yes.
See, like I said, so we drive through there, and I can see where Bigfoot would be hiding. Like I said, Flagstaff, Williams, you know, those areas, all the way up to just before you get to Kingman. I can see that. Of course, I'm only looking from the highway.
Right.
So, I mean, I have driven through Flagstaff, and I know Williams like the back of my hand now at this point. But is there, in the desert part, do people see Bigfoot in the part where there's desert, or only in the areas where the forest is?
No, they're more prevalent in the forested areas. And Arizona, southern Arizona, has what we call sky islands. So there's mountain ranges that, like for instance, the Pinaleo Mountains near Safford. You know, Safford's at about a 2,000-foot elevation, and it goes rapidly up to 11,000 feet up to the top of Mount Graham and the Pinaleos. So it's and up there it's actually like a Canadian, you know, the high altitude forest, you know, the Canadian zone. So it's you know, there's fir trees and ferns, and it's astonishing when you get on top of Mount Graham. I've had experiences up on Mount Graham down there, and that's, you know, pretty far south. I've had them in the Santa Catalina Mountains, which is just north of Tucson. And then they come down out of those mountain ranges a lot and into the, you know, down, you know, this, for hunting or foraging or whatever, they'll come down into the deserts. There are some areas, especially where there's man-made lakes in the deserts, or like the Gila River, which has water in it, especially as you get a little further south near Gila Bend. They're actually in that area as well. I've had some experiences down there as well, but yeah, those they didn't want me in that area. There was some rock throwing going on. So, but yeah, no. So that they're in the deserts as well. But a lot of times I think they'll migrate up to the higher elevations as well on those sky islands, especially if it gets too hot. So
I can see that. Amanda, I will have to get back to you on that. I don't know. I know how to answer your question. I will answer your question off air because I think it's more private than public. So, but thank you for asking, and I wrote your name down, and I will get to your question. I promise. So, no, and so you said you've witnessed in 12 states.
yes.
So
well, yeah, I've witnessed in 4 states.
4 states.
I've had experiences in 12 states. So,
okay.
Not necessarily seen them, but certainly either making a call and having them call back, or throwing rocks at me, or seeing eye shine but not seeing them, so forth.
So you wrote some blogs.
Yes.
And one of them I found, well, 2 of them I found really interesting, because a Chicago Bigfoot and a Long Island Bigfoot.
Yep. You would not believe.
I don't.
How it's really hard to believe. So, I was working out on Long Island for almost 2 years, and I started, there's a lot on Long Island. There's a lot of wooded areas out there, especially the further east you get. There's pine barrens, and there's lakes that are surrounded by forest preserves or wildlife preserves and so forth. And once I started from a central point where I was kind of centered for work, and kind of worked my way out. And I first started to the west, closer towards New York City, and I really didn't find any evidence of them in the woods, structures, etc. So I started moving further east, and oddly enough, when I got close to where my hotel was in central Long Island, there was a forest preserve that slash county park that was about 1,100 acres, and I went in there, and there was so many structures in there, and I was astonished. I was like, "Oh my, this is a 10-minute drive from. I can get off work and go in there." I was really excited. So I kind of looked at a map, and I thought, well, where are they going? Well, it turns out, it looked like the woods were fairly contiguous, but didn't quite. There was a interstate, or actually the North Highway, the Northern Parkway, kind of bisected this park, and the southern part of this park actually came close to the hotel. So I started going to concierge every night, thank you, Marriott, and took some apples from concierge, and I'd go out to the woods, and I started gifting them apples. I couldn't figure out why they would live there, because there wasn't a creek that was in this forest preserve. But the funny thing is with this area, there was stories going back to the 1600s of people that they drive their wagons through this area on the road, and they would hear the mournful howls of all these stories, insert blank, of a mother that lost her baby. She was crying to think, oh, there used to be an insane asylum here, and it was torn down, and it's the inmates that were okay. None of that stuff's true. There was never asylum there. There was okay. So I said, well, what's the what's the common theme here? So it was that's what kind of drove me to that area. Especially to get there in there first. But when they um, you know reading some of the things like there was glowing eyes in the woods. Oh, it was a demon. The demons of these certain woods. Rocks materialized out of midair. And then I realized that that was what the that because there was no reports that I could kind of base research areas on Long Island. I actually turned towards looking at, oddly enough, paranormal websites of ghost hunting teams, and they taught, so I looked up every one of them that referenced haunted woods on Long Island, and when I started reading some of the accounts of their experiences, I was like, I know what that is, So I started setting up, in this one woods, like I said, a gifting station, and the apples were taken. Couldn't figure out why. Wasn't sure what was taking the apples. So I set up a game camera at one point. And I was learning, and nowadays I don't set up any cameras or anything. I'm just in it for the experience. I want to interact with them and learn, and I don't want to pretend like I'm trying to trick them or anything. It's just me and them, and I don't. It's a very rewarding. I'll put it that way. And so anyway, I set up a game camera, and it was strapped really tight to a tree, and the apples sat there, and the apples sat there, and the apples sat there, and the very next frame, and as the pictures were taken, there'd be a leaf that just twitched a little bit in the breeze. It took a picture. One little twitch here took a picture, but the last picture of a twitching leaf, and then the very next frame after that was taken of a twitching leaf, both apples were gone. So
that was pretty quick.
I don't know how they got the apples without the camera triggering, and it wasn't sometimes when you're doing the evidence, you actually get more more questions than answers. But when you actually get each data point, then you can base theories on that and move forward. And that's kind of where I was. But as I continued to gift these apples, all of a sudden one day, I stopped buying I put out apples at night. In the morning, the apples would be gone. I'd check on them before I went to work. I came back after work, and replace the apples, or in the mornings I'd replace the apples if they were gone already. But a lot of times they took them during the day, which was I always found interesting. But when the one time finally they actually left a little gift for me, which was a small rock that was just a polished rock, and they left it up in the nook of this tree where the apple had been.
That's interesting.
I was so incredibly excited. I took the rock and I went into the office and I emailed all my friends and all the researchers, and I was like, I'm so excited. This is the first gift that I got. And they said, no. One of them said, no, you should put it back. You should put it back. That was just kind of their way of saying thank you, but put it back. And I said, okay. So at lunchtime, I drove back over to the location. I put the rock back in the nook of the tree. And then as I went to walk away, I thought to myself, no, you know what? I'll put it on this little stump about 10 feet from the gifting area. So I put it on that stump, and then I left the area. After work, I stopped by again. The rock had been moved from the stump back up into the nook of the branch where the apple had been earlier. So at that point, I knew, no, they want me to take it. That's their gift. It's like, no, take it. So that started a series of every time I left an apple, they'd leave a gift. Every time I left, and it'd be a fossil or it'd be a polished rock or a feather sometimes. And it was really interesting. I tried different things. Like I hung apples with fishing line hanging from, the center so they could, take it and see what they do. And they'd place it on the ground. And then sometimes they'd actually take sticks and break them and put them into a pattern on the ground, which I started calling ground glyphs. And I know a lot of people, call them that, or but it's a form of communication from them. And what the exact meaning is, that's up for debate. But it's definitely a sign of communication and a willingness to interact with us. So, and that, everybody says, "Oh, they're dumb apes" or whatever. No, they're like us. They are extremely smart, and that's how they can stay hidden so well. Even
well, there has to be some way. I mean, if they truly do exist, and that's your theory, is that they truly do, then they have to be highly intelligent to be able to keep from getting caught.
Right.
Make sure that every picture is blurry.
Well,
they got to be moving.
They do move pretty fast. I saw one in Arizona running in the middle of the day. That was my second sighting, and it ran so fast. It was, even though I had a camera in my hand, and it took off so fast that my first reaction was, "Yeah, okay." And then, anybody who says that oh, you should be able, you'll be able to just film it, no, it takes a second or two for your body to start reacting. And by the time I got my camera up, it was already into the brush. But it ran a good 50 feet in a matter of like a second and a half. But it was moving so fast and so large. Just and I always tell everybody that it was kind of funny when I thought back on it, because where it was running along this ridge line, it was backlit by the sun, and its hair. First off, it glided across the ridge line, which was just unusual. I'd never seen anything run like that. And then number two, being backlit by the sun, and it had a orangish brown hair, but the hair was so, it wasn't like matted and like you see some Hollywood it's nasty looking matted hair clump. No, it was very fine hair that was flowing as it ran. So the hair was moving, and I always joked it was like a L'Oreal commercial.
Oh, I was just thinking Fabio.
Yeah, tossing their hair, but it was so fine. The hair was so fine, and it was astonishing. And their size, of course, but in that same area, my sixth sighting, I stepped out onto the meadow and kind of surprised one there was a fallen tree. It was digging at the base of this fallen tree, and in a kind of a squatting position, with its knees up, its butt almost touching the ground, and digging between its legs, right at the base of this tree stump. And I watched it. I saw it for like a second as it was digging, and then all of a sudden it realized I was there, and it looked up at me, and we locked eyes for a couple seconds, and then it erupted from this very small, compact, hairy ball that was near the ground up to this 8-foot tall thing. As it jumped about 6 feet from where it was, from a squatting position, its first step landed about 6 feet from where it had been.
Did you jump?
No, I stood there. I was shocked. I actually had a video camera in my hand pointed one direction, and before I could turn it out, he was into the brush. So all the video you hear is just crack, boom, crash, boom. It was not. It was disappointing, but I also didn't after I saw him, I didn't go running up to the location. I just went, okay, I'm just going to catch my breath, and I continued hiking down the canyon. And then when I came back, that's when I went back and measured to see where the footprint landed and, so forth. But unfortunately, Arizona has a lot of hard pack. So, when they land, it's like, it's obvious where the footprint is. There's really no details to cast it, though, unfortunately. But
Yeah. I'd like to say hello to Brandon Cooper. Thank you for being in the chat. And I appreciate all the comments you guys are making. I'm enjoying reading them. So hopefully everybody else is enjoying them as well out there in whichever land you're watching this in, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So let us know. So you also, well, I used to live in Paterson, New Jersey. So
okay.
I know the terrain in New Jersey. It goes from beach to mountains.
Yep.
And where I lived, we had some mountains there. No beach. We were too far inland. But, there were places there where, looking back at now, I could see where on Garrett Mountain there would have been Bigfoot. There's lots of water, the Passaic River, lots of animals and all this other stuff. I could see where that would be an area where there would be Bigfoot. But Chicago, was that actually in Chicago, outside Chicago?
Outside Chicago in the suburbs. So actually, there the furthest east in the suburbs that I found signs of them was along the Des Plaines River. So actually, east of O'Hare Airport. So, between O'Hare and Chicago in that area. And then moving further west, there's, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it the Busse Woods, but Busse Woods. And it's a very, very large public park, and there's a boating area and there's lakes and so forth. But in a certain area of those woods, there was a tremendous amount of sign of structures that they built, and I didn't find any footprints, but those structures. And I continued. I hit every single forest preserve. Chicago has a lot of forest preserves in and around all the suburbs, and pretty soon I started heading further out west, actually closer to where I was working, and thinking that there was no way, because this one forest preserve was bordered by neighborhoods on either side, but it was pretty wide. It was probably a good half mile wide at least, but very long, and stretched all the way up towards Algonquin, Illinois. And I started further north because I figured they'd be further away from people. Didn't find signs, and the closer I got, and all of a sudden I got into an area that it was rife with structures and signs of them, and so I continued going into that area, once again gifting apples, kind of repeating the same thing that I found, and it wasn't like I just went to a place and, oh, look, there's one. I'm talking, there was a lot of legwork and a lot of research and, a lot of striking out, but I think now I really understand, how their structures are and where the types of areas they would be in. So, I can look on a map and narrow it down to, the 90% solution, just by looking at a map. But they, in this area in Chicago, there was a railroad track that kind of bisected the woods, and that, looking down that railroad track, you could see at least a half mile. I don't know if anybody who's stood on a railroad track and looked down the line, right? It's pretty flat, and so the visibility was great down this track, and it was about a half mile stretch. And I always thought, well, if one's crossing the railroad track, every time I come up this road, I'm going to take a look down the railroad track. So I did the same exact thing, repeated probably, 75, 80 times at least. And then by the time I got up to, you know, I'm driving up there to go to the research area, and I glance up the railroad tracks, and here's a Sasquatch crossing the railroad, going over the railroad tracks into this, one area. And the way it just took 2 steps to go over the tracks, across across the trestle and down the other side. And I came back later, and I was in my dress clothes from work still, so I had to kind of, go up the tracks. And I got back up to that area, and down at the bottom near the creek, I could see where there was multiple prints down at the bottom, and some were small, some were medium, some were very large, but the way the slope of the, and all of those easily castable, but some of them were extremely deep in the mud and dirt down below. But to get down there, I would have broken my ass getting down. Excuse me.
Oh, that's okay.
But yeah, that was, but knowing that there was more than one individual that was transiting along this creek and, over the railroad track and into this other area, then I realized exactly how they were moving from one area to the other for food and resources. And so then I started, researching heavily in this one area, and that's where I ended up. I actually ended up one of the juveniles, and it wasn't anything I did. I was just hiking into the trail, and all of a sudden I heard a lot of ruckus, and I thought there was maybe 1 or 2 deer that were going to be bounding out of the brush any minute. And there was some brush moving lower. I kind of got into a position to get a good look. I got my cell phone out. I was going to take a picture of some deer bounding out across the trail, and nothing ever bounded out across the trail. And then all of a sudden I started hearing rustling, but vertically now up in the tree. And I started scanning the tops of the trees, and up in the tree about 120 feet away from me, I see this arm reach out from the tree, grab a branch, and the arm was, black hair, and but you could see the definition of fingers, right? Reached out, grabbed this branch, greenery, and pulled it into the top of this tree. Well, that tree was right off the trail, but up ahead. So I double timed it up there, and I got up to that tree, knowing it hasn't come out of the tree. It's in that tree. So I started taking photos. I started taking video. I tried some other tricks, like I pretended to take a picture of the meadow that was nearby, but I had it on selfie mode, thinking it might peek out of there, and couldn't find it. But it wasn't until late, so I spent about 40 minutes doing that until I started hearing some branches breaking on either side of the trail. Then I reasoned, okay, if it's a juvenile that was treed and stuck in the tree with me hanging around down here, the adults are going to start, they're losing their patience with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I left, but it wasn't until later I went back and re-examined the photos that suddenly you could see, oh, there's the edge of its back and its buttocks hanging out from the tree. And you look on the other side and you can see a shadow against the, as the sun was going down. And in the video, as I examined the video, you got the thing, and it's in the greenery, and it's looking straight at me. And you can see the top of the head and the brow and the bridge of the nose and the eye sockets. It's, it was, I have 3 separate images from 3 different directions, of the individual that was up in the tree. But
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'd also like to say hello to Howard and my sister Judy. And yes, Judy, this is Clover. And for anybody wondering, this is Clover. This is my granddaughter. She's decided she needs to be on my lap. And as she's not being bad, got to take it for what it's worth.
Sure.
So she's going to be 2 in April. So,
well, you're blessed.
I know I am. Got 4 of these little boogers running around. So, luckily not all here, but in a few months, never know what's going to happen on a Paranormal Pride show after that.
Sure.
So, you also had experience. You were telling us before the show about an experience you had up in Bethany, and a friend of mine lives off that exit you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's like exit 95 or something like that along Interstate 35 there.
I just know that she lives off that exit.
Okay.
Because I went up there and all of a sudden my brain lost it. The exit has an R. In the name of the town down there has an R in it, and suddenly I've forgotten exactly what it is. So, and hello again, John. Thank you for being here. So, but what was your experience up there near Bethany?
So that it was in 2012, and I'd actually been back in Iowa in the Dubuque area, and in Des Moines for a car show. So I was actually on my way back to Arizona, trailering my car that had been the shows, and I got down towards. I decided to cross Iowa using US 30 across Iowa instead of Interstate 80, which almost everyone does. And the reason why was because that day it was 104 degrees in Iowa, and anybody that's been up in Iowa, and if it's 104, you're going to die. I mean, it's super hot.
I have to tell you, the reason that we're moving from here, because we're south of there about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Just over 2 hours. 110 in the summertime and minus 10 in the winter, and that's on a good year.
Yeah, you're lucky if you don't shatter, right?
Yeah, I mean, you live in Arizona, so if you're in Phoenix or Tucson, you deal with that every day, the being really, really hot. But you guys don't get that cold.
Nope.
So.
Yeah, so I'm driving along, and my thought process was that if I'm sweating and I can't handle the 104 degree temperatures, that the Sasquatch will also risk trying to get into a farm pond, into a creek, into a river to cool off. Because they're very much physiologically just like us, except a whole lot larger and stronger. So
and covered in fur.
And covered in fur. So, well, I am kind of too, but another story.
Well, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah. So when so the entire drive all the way from Cedar Rapids to Des Moines, every single farm pond was scrutinized as we cruised on down the highway. So my daughter was helping out, keeping an eye out, and we didn't see anything. And I was a little disappointed, but we got to Des Moines, and as we headed down Interstate 35, we did the same thing. We started looking in every farm pond, in every creek, in every river, lake that we, passed over. And we didn't see anything. So we ended up crossing over out of Iowa into Missouri, and we're heading south. And by this time, my daughter started, losing a little bit of interest, but also the sun was getting a little low. It was maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock at night. And so the sun's lower in the sky, and just north of Bethany, I glanced over and at Farm Pond as we're passing by on the west side of the freeway, and I see something that looks like a giant tree stump in the middle of this farm pond, and it looked like it had moss hanging off of it, and as we started to pass by, it actually turned. The tree stump moved, and you could actually see the sunlight through the armpits, and a little bit into the crotch, because the water depth was maybe up to a little above the knees on the individual. But you could see the sun, through it, and you could see just the hairy moss, and you could actually see water dripping off of off of it as we passed by, and I said, "Oh my God, there's," and my daughter glanced up and she saw, she said, "Well, that looked like a tree stump," But by the time she looked up, it was she didn't get the view that I did, but yeah, it was definitely there. And then subsequent trips to Iowa, I've driven past that pond and I've looked over at it, and there's no tree stump in the middle of it. So.
And I just remembered the name of the exit. It's Ridgeway.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
I mean, I've only been up there twice. A few times, but I've only been off that exit once. So, and hello, Joe. Good to see that you're in there. Hope you're doing well back there in Maryland. So, so now we've talked about Arizona, Illinois, New York. What about Maryland?
So Maryland, I had a lot of work to do in Washington, D.C. and up in Rockville, Maryland. So, in the evenings, I kind of did a lot of research on different reports in the area. And I found this location that was, about a 35, 40-minute drive, kind of northwest of Rockville, that there was a large stone quarry there. And there had been some reports of rocks being thrown there and eerie howls at night, of a stone quarryman who had fallen into the quarry at, some story like that. It's like, okay, it's not a ghost throwing rocks at people, so, I mean, it could, I guess, but not typically not with howling as well at the same time. So I went out to this little town to check that out, and did some calls into that quarry, and actually got a call back out of the quarry that responded to the howl that I did. And if you can guess by the tenor of my voice, I can let out a pretty good howl.
Oh, and, most likely.
Yeah.
A good bellow.
Yeah, it's a low voice. So I get, so I finished up there, and of course I couldn't get axe, and it was dark. I didn't want to fall into the quarry and become a statistic. So I decided, well, I'm going to head over to the canal nearby there, which is, I think, the B&O canal through there. And
yep.
So I went up to the canal, and I did a howl there, and I just sat there waiting. And then all of a sudden I started hearing some crunching on the other side, like something just really bushwhacking it through towards my location, and then it stopped. Then I heard a very low, I'm guessing once it got into a location where it actually saw that it was myself, he didn't, I heard this very low sound, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
So I kind of waved into the darkness, and I kind of headed out of there. But on the way back towards Rockville, I stopped at another location along the B&O and had a similar experience there as well. So, it's like a short drive from Rockville, and all of a sudden I've got three interactions happened, so it's three different individuals, so, that really struck me as either there's an incredibly high population there, or, the numbers of them across the U.S. is a lot higher than many have predicted and think. So,
Did you have prior knowledge of possible Bigfoot in any of these areas that you were going? Like in Ridgeway, did you know if there had been any sightings there before?
No, had no idea. It was just driving along the road, and just had a theory of how I could, that they might be swimming in a farm pond anywhere along this route. That was it.
Because I've only found one report.
Oh, really? Well,
And
I
on
never,
that off that exit, yeah.
yeah, and I never reported it because
No, it was somebody who reported that she saw Bigfoot there in 79.
oh, okay.
She was 11 years old.
Yep. Well, they're in that
So,
area. I don't know where I really haven't gone and done an actual good investigation of that area to figure out where they might be staying. But there's rivers and creeks through there that there's people aren't farming down in there, and they are very adept at hiding. That's for sure.
well, we do have bears up there now.
Oh,
They
really?
made their way from like the Arkansas area to
Okay.
northern Missouri. There's been reports on the news of bears found dead and other stuff. So uh, we also got wildcats here. I mean, mountain lions. People, you go. I mean, we have mountain lions in my town. We don't have any mountains. Okay.
Yeah.
We do have a wildcat sanctuary, but they say that if there's one missing, you'd think they'd say something.
Right. Sure.
But I was talking last night to my son-in-law, and he goes, "Well, how do you know it wasn't a bobcat?" I said, "Because its tail was this big around, and it was the color of a golden retriever."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you know when you see a wildcat.
Right.
You may not know if it's a mountain lion, but you would know that it was a big cat and not a bobcat.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I saw a mountain lion that had been hit by a truck on US 30 just west of Geneva, Illinois, and there was three cars out, and they were all looking at the mountain lion. And as I drove past, I looked down. I said, "Wow, holy, a mountain lion!" West of Geneva on US 30, and I and later on the news it said, "Oh, there was a dog that was killed on the." It's like
I want a dog.
I've seen mountain lions out in the wild, and obviously in like the Arizona, in the Phoenix Zoo, and in the Desert Sonoran Museum down in Tucson and so forth. And I know what mountain lions look like. I know what they sound like out in the wild. I've heard them many times more than I've seen them. But I was even stalked by one once. That's one of the reasons why I always carry a sidearm when I'm out in the woods. Because
I mean, so one question that I usually ask my Bigfoot. Sorry, she found some coasters. So now, hey, it's kids' favorite toy. I don't know why, but all my grandkids like coasters for some reason.
That and boxes. It's like,
well, we got 5 cats, so we don't have enough boxes.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, that would be great if Bigfoot thought that boxes were great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Boxes.
Yeah.
Catch him. We call the boxes cat traps.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's all they are. So, but one question I ask all my Bigfoot people: Bigfoot, should I be scared of Bigfoot? Is Bigfoot going to kill me, or is Bigfoot my friend?
Bigfoot.
I mean, should I be fearful?
They're like us. I mean, I've never. I mean, I've had rocks and sticks and stuff thrown at me, but some of the times where I was completely prone, if they really wanted to kill me, they would have, they could have easily nailed me, and I would have never even seen it coming. But for the most part, I wouldn't worry that if they are throwing rocks and sticks, especially smaller rocks and sticks at you, it's because they want you out of their area. That'd be like if you're in your living room there, and all of a sudden somebody shows up in your living room, and you're like, "Hey, get out of here!" I'm not. I didn't invite you in, and now you're hanging out here in my vicinity. Yeah, I don't see one in your bedroom or the room there.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. But yeah, so I wouldn't worry if, like I said, if they're and sometimes if you don't show fear and you show interest in them, they'll actually they'll kind of extend that courtesy as well, and they'll start communicating with you, like clacking rocks to you, or making tongue clacks, or doing tree strikes, or there's a lot of ways that they'll rudimentary communicate with you. But the one thing that I have learned in the past probably 7 years of doing this is that they absolutely, at least most of them, that I've since I came to that realization that they understand English. And I don't know if they actually understand English as per se, or if they actually just understand our intent or what we're thinking or how it translates. But they'll do that. So I had one up on the Mogollon Rim, near not far from Forest Lakes, Arizona, and they actually, before I climbed into my Yukon to take a short nap in the middle of the night, right? It was about 11 p.m. And before I climbed into my sleeping bag inside, I just turned to the woods and I said, if you want to, I'd like it if you left a handprint on my vehicle. So I climbed into the car, went to sleep. Well, about 3 a.m. I wake up and I was wearing a Fitbit, and Fitbit normally has like a laser sensor on it, and this one had like a green laser that illuminated if there was a gap between your wrist and the Fitbit. Well, as I turned and I started waking up at 3 a.m., the Fitbit turned on as I moved my wrist, and that green glow illuminated the inside of the Yukon. And as I had just opened my eyes in the dark, all of a sudden I see this face at the window, and it's just inches from the window looking in the window. So
Yes.
there's this impossibly large Sasquatch face looking straight in the window at me. And as I kind of, blinked, as I blinked, it started to move backwards until it just kind of faded into the night. So of course I propped up really quick and I looked out the window and I was trying to see any motion between trees, if see the shadows, because it was only starlight out that night, and I couldn't see anything moving. So I watched for about 15-20 minutes, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to bed. So I went back to bed, and I wake up at 5:15, and here on that area where I had actually just been seeing the face a couple hours earlier, there's this handprint on the window, right? and from the base of the thumb up to the tip of the pinky was 14 inches.
That's pretty long.
Pretty large. And then the very top digit of the pinky was 1.25 inches wide. So, and you could actually see dermal ridges in it, and almost like a lifeline in it, and it was pretty amazing. And then also at the same time, my friend who was sleeping in his Suburban, one left a handprint on his hood, but it was 11 inches from the pinky down to the base of the thumb. So a different individual, and in the dust on the hood, you could actually see the hairs along the edge of the hand and along the wrist area. That was in there.
So your thoughts on, or your theory?
Yes.
Mammal or primate?
Primate.
Okay.
Primate. They are extremely close to us. In fact, I think the one DNA study came back as 99.3% match. And that brought it into a range that a lot, and I know a lot of people have blood samples, including myself, of, I tracked one for almost a quarter mile that had a cut in its foot, and where it had stopped, there was these blood droplets, and the blood droplets were just starting to coagulate. I mean, they were fresh. But if I send that, I have to find the correct lab, because if I send those in, it's a 1%. They have a 1% margin of error on the samples like that. So they'd come back and they'd say human contamination.
Or they'll say, or you'll never hear anything, and
Or
your
you never
sample
hear
got
anything.
lost.
Or they say, yeah, exactly. I don't doubt that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people tell me that they've submitted their samples and they never got any report back and got, we never received it. And as sad as that is, you have to send a big enough sample for them to be able to do anything with.
Yep.
So, needless to say,
Send the body.
Send the body.
And that would disappear.
Right.
Yeah, historically, I mean, there's been farmers from Minnesota down to Alabama that have been plowing fields and come across a grave and of a skeleton of impossible size. The reports that from 1860 all the way up till the 30s, the newspaper reports all talk about that the jaw was so large that it actually fit over the jaw of a person, and that that it was at least 8 or 9 feet tall. That the skeleton was, and then the Smithsonian was contacted. The bones were collected, and the Smithsonian took collected the bones from the grave. Well, you contact the Smithsonian about that, they go, oh, that's just that was the newspapers back then. You just couldn't believe what they were saying back then.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and that's what you would get. But sometimes the newspaper actually recorded the collection number from the Smithsonian. So it was like case number XXX, whatever, and they had the number for those. So there was at least about 6 or 7, 8 cases of where the newspaper record in the 1890s recorded that Smithsonian case number. When our group had contacted the Smithsonian with that exact case number to say we'd like to schedule a visit in order to review the contents of case whatever, they'd say we don't have any file on that case, or the contents of the they're missing, or et cetera, et cetera.
That's mishandling of evidence. If you were a cop, you'd lose your job for that.
Well, it doesn't meet the narrative, No,
it doesn't.
So,
because it's no different than them just releasing UFO stuff. It's like, come on, we know, we can take it. Let us know. Tell us what, either they have proof of Bigfoot or they don't. But the thing is they just got to be honest, whether they do or don't.
Right. Well,
are we going to believe them is the other part of that. And what are their odds of them thinking that we believe that there were whole bunches of Robert Wadlows buried all over the damn place in the United States randomly?
Yep. And I've been to his grave in Alton, Illinois.
Yep. We're volunteers in Alton at the McPike Mansion.
Oh, okay.
So know the area very well.
If you're in Alton next time, you have to stop by and say hi to my friends at Morrison Irish Pub over in Alton. There, you'll have a great time there. I'm just letting you know.
Is it in the old downtown?
It's right near the mill, right on the highway heading north towards Grafton. So
okay. In a part that gets flooded a lot, apparently.
Yes. In fact, when I was working in St. Louis, and that's another area of research that I haven't written about yet, but I went to several areas in that, and I had a lot of in Southern Illinois, and had experiences of getting callbacks to my my prompts, and so it was that was very interesting up in the Pierre Marquette up near Grafton there, and further up the Illinois River, actually near my cousins. They have a farm up there that was like a vacation farm, and I stayed in one of the cabins at night, and about 3 a.m. in the morning, I got a visitor came by the cabin, which was surprise. It surprised me, but after hearing some of the reports, there's reports up in that area as well.
Yeah. My husband's from St. Louis.
Okay.
So again, know the area. See,
Yep.
most of the places you've talked about, I mean, I've never been to Chicago, but I've been close. I've been to DeKalb, or DeKalb, depending upon where you're from.
Yeah.
Maryland, all over the darn place. But St. Louis, my husband always used to go out to Creve Coeur Park.
Yeah.
Some of these other places. I don't know where you went, but
so I had a sighting in West Alton. So, I had like I said, in Illinois, on the Illinois side, I had a experience. I communicated with them near Edwardsville, south of Alton, north of Alton in Pierre Marquette area. So you're familiar with the Piasaw in Alton. So I have actually met a few people that actually have had sightings of the Piasaw. And I went up into that area where they had the sighting, and I recorded something impossibly loud that sounded like a giant bird to me. And I had only stopped in that area because I saw some Bigfoot sign in that area, so I was getting out to take pictures of it, and all of a sudden this screech lets out, and it was super loud. I don't know.
There's some people out there that believe that the Paisa bird is a thunderbird, and others think that it's a pterodactyl that survived.
Well, it could be, but some of the sighting that they had and the detail they had, because it was in their headlights, and actually flying in front of their vehicle as they were driving 35 miles an hour and facing towards them, so it was flapping and flying backwards in front of their vehicle. But based on the historical drawings that were on the bluffs there, their sighting, modern day sighting, and everything. I personally, I'm working on a theory that somehow the Jersey Devil and going down, possibly even Mothman, and going down the river tributaries, so up the Mississippi, on the Ohio, that they're the same or similar species of something,
Yep. The Missouri River dumps out just north of Alton. You just don't know where stuff is coming from. If it's coming down the Missouri and down the Mississippi, what you're going to get.
And then you have the Illinois River coming in right there too. So it's
a little bit further from there. Yep. And so it's weird. I tell people all the time that, the history of Alton and the history of a town called Atchison, Kansas, if you lay them on a map and you fold Missouri in half, they land on top of each other, and they've got the strangest things to talk about. And a lot of it related to Pierre Marquette.
Yeah.
Because of the, Lewis and
Clark
coming through, plus all these others, they all came out this way at some point.
Well, and that's actually where I had my sighting in West Alton, which was on the highway that kind of loosely follows the trail that Lewis and Clark took. But every night when I came back from Alton, and I would head up and take that road if it wasn't flooded, and head through West Alton and come out into St. Charles and then back, back to St. Louis. But and I did that, I don't know, 60 times, 70 times driving that road at night, going about 35, brights on, about 11 p.m. And the one night I'm driving up that road, and all of a sudden, in the headlights catches what is it? And this is the only one I've seen that looked kind of grayish, but it was very mossy looking, but a grayish brown look to it. And as I approached, I thought to myself, well, I don't ever recall ever seeing that mossy tree there. And as I started getting closer, the upper torso turned and looked towards the headlights, and the eyeballs just glowed like large saucers, just reflected white back at the headlights, and then it squinted, and just as I passed by, and I looked at it, and I slammed on the brakes as fast as I could, threw it in reverse, and I went back, and the tree was gone. So, and I assumed it had crossed the road into this cornfield that was kind of all the corn stalks were dry. They were getting ready for for feed corn. And so the next morning I actually got up 6 a.m., drove back out to that area just so I could look for footprints in the daylight. So by the time I got in, before I went into work, so I'm in dress clothes again. It's a lot of fun. It's funny when you read some of my stuff, you'll see I'm in dress shoes, dress slacks, polos, dress shirts. It's got
to take advantage of the time that you got when you go someplace.
Yeah. Well, it was the funniest one was when I went out onto that railroad track to look at to look at those prints and kind of do measurements on the crossing. I was out there and I was parked there, and a sheriff pulled up as I was walking back off the tracks. How do I explain this to the sheriff, right? So but the fact that I was dressed up to the nines,
well, they probably figure that you're there for a job at that point.
Right. Yeah. So he just was like, "What are you doing out there?" And I said, "Oh, I thought I saw a wild animal out there." And he said, "On your dress clothes?" I go, "Yeah, I just got off work. I thought, there was injured animal, And he's like, "Oh," he goes, "Well, don't get on the tracks." He goes, "That's dangerous." I was like, oh, "Yes, sir." So, but
well, I think that they are more impressed that you're dressed up and you're not drunk. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, maybe so.
I mean, we do watch live PD. Well, on Patrol Live, we watch that all the time, and I see how impressed they are when you're not drunk.
Yeah, I don't know how some of those guys get out of their shirts so fast and get running, So
no. I have no clue.
Yeah.
Or out of their shoes.
Yeah.
That's the bigger one these days. So, but I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
And feel free to say no.
Okay.
Gary asks, can you do a howl for us?
Oh gosh. I'm in the hotel right now. I'm worried.
Okay, then no, don't. I don't want
I better
you to
not
get
do
kicked
that.
out. No, don't. You don't want to get kicked out. And then he also asks, have you ever experienced the Ozarks area of Missouri and Arkansas?
I haven't, unless I was watching the television series. No. But
and that's not even there.
Yeah, I know it isn't. But no, that's one area that I definitely want to get to. I just haven't. Work hasn't sent me there, and I haven't had the free time just to go head out on my own. I mean, right now I'm in Dallas, so I'm away from home actually for the last week, and head back this weekend back to Arizona. But
so what is your day job?
My day job is let's see, how do I do that? So I'm a software analyst, software consultant. So I help direct companies in order to try to improve their supply chain.
Okay.
For probably 20 years, I've been warning them about certain supply chain habits that they were using, and everybody said, we're here to, we're going to save money doing this.
Just in time is not the best. Not the best way to do stuff.
No, there was this thing called safety stock, and they really worked too hard to eliminate that safety stock, and with the assumption that the chain will never be broken. But I said it's always as weak as it'll break at the weakest link, and I think we experienced that. So
I worked for supply chain in Sprint and Bark, and then for a little bit with CenturyLink at one time. So I still remember all the stuff. I mean, just getting a purchase order through on supply chain just takes, the bottleneck. Whoever the bottleneck is in your supply chain causes a lot of problems. But my biggest thing was I was the contact for Hurricane Katrina for all of Sprint.
Okay.
So anytime that they needed to order something, it had to come through me. And so it was hard, but it got done. It just, but again, I knew who the bottleneck was.
Right. Sure.
But right now we're having trouble with anything resin, plastic. I still work for Lumen, but I'm on the network side. So during COVID, when they stopped everything, all those resin boxes for the neighborhoods and all that. Guess what we couldn't get? We couldn't get the stuff from Corning. We couldn't get the stuff from any of our big suppliers that supplied internet stuff. Guess what all went through the roof when everybody had to start working from home?
Yep.
We had to have internet. We had to have all this stuff, and we couldn't get it. And we're still having trouble closing projects because of missing equipment that we never got, that we stole from Peter to pay Paul.
Right. Sure.
And so, needless to say, I understand what you're talking about. People are been trying to get me to come back to supply chain since all this stuff has happened. And I am a software person as well. So I write code for automation. So I have a day job. This isn't what I do. I'm a data analyst on my worst days, and on my good days, I'm an AI person. So,
well, and it's I consider that it's actually helped me in this kind of hobby of mine because I know how to take data points and understand the correlation of that and kind of perform that analysis of okay, A happened. If you're debugging a software, right, you'd say this happened. What are the root cause analysis on how this happened? So then you start applying that same principle to research here, and and it's been very eye-opening. I would have never, like I said, if in 2007, if you said, hey, you know what, 15 years from now, you're going to be looking for Sasquatch, I'd be like, I was like,
it's still just data analysis.
It is.
I mean, when it comes right down to it, that's whether you're looking for ghosts, Bigfoot, aliens, any other sort of anomaly or abnormality, it is all data. And without data, you're getting nothing. You got junk.
Exactly.
So, and I'm, like I tell people all the time, my whole job is data. Give me data and I can tell you something about it. I can figure it out because data analysis is data analysis. Once you can analyze one, you can analyze all.
Yep. And when you have, and the thing that people are always hung up on, I have to have a piece of physical evidence, before I believe something. And sometimes the physical evidence presents itself and people ignore it and, or don't, or overlook that. But a lot of times the experiences are as important because you can look at that experience and try to, and, understand, like I said, why did this happen, or how did this happen, or what's happening here? And then extrapolate that out into trying to figure out the why, what, where. And I think that's how I've had a lot of success, especially, in finding them in the locations that I have, because I've drawn on other resources as well, not just people that said I saw a Sasquatch. They're saying something weird happened in the woods, and I think it's a ghost. Because
that's what they're comfortable with saying that it is.
Yeah.
Or it's a shadow person, or this or that, and they didn't see it clearly. Well, just the fact that you have a data point in this forest should be something. But say you have 15 data points in that forest and all different people. Guess what? You might have something.
Exactly.
One you may not, but more than one, you got to start thinking about that a little bit. And like I said, I'm not a big Bigfoot person, but data talks.
Yep.
Whether you can see it or not. And with data, you don't have to read between the lines. Sometimes the lines stick out at you at some point. We have another question from Michael Roberts. He asks, do you have pictures of any of the handprints?
I do. I can't. I'd have to pull them up. I could send them along here.
Well, you know what? You can always post them in the event.
Oh, there we go. I'll do that.
So there you go, Michael. And then Gary asks, what do you think about tree knocks?
So, tree knocks, they carry quite a ways. They are, they're very effective. There's some researchers that were trying to tell me that tree knocks are caused because as the pine trees cool down in the evening, that the trees themselves make the sounds. But I've found, branches that have been completely splintered freshly, that I've recorded on audio devices, and those, you can hear the Bigfoot going over and knocking on the tree, and then here's this splintered, log nearby that tree. I think what they use that primarily for warning, primarily for warning, or for just a quick, I'm here, or come here, and then one response knock. So kind of like if you think about maybe even like at a much louder scale, like a sniper in the army, right? They might have a small clicker, or if a group of SEALs or something is attacking, right? They might have a clicker and go click, 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 and they're communicating back and forth at a different level. But the tree knocks, I think, are for longer distance. So if a clan is, I'll say, hunting in a certain area or doing food gathering, you could do this knock and they'll, come into that area. I've used it and I've had responses from the knocks. And in fact, I did one, my very first sighting was actually with my 12-year-old nephew in tow with night vision at night. I did a couple knocks, and from across the canyon, maybe a quarter mile away, I hear a single knock back. So then I did a single knock in return. Then we waited quite a while, and then I decided, well, I'm going to do one more time. So I knocked again, and response knock came back from right across the canyon, and then we heard some scrabble, rock scrabbling down into the creek bed down below, and then coming up the hillside, you could hear brush moving, and this individual came peeking out from the bush. You could actually see it in the night vision, trying to figure out what are they doing, who is this, and then they started coming closer, and you could hear just the ever so slightly, just twigs were snapping, but so soft. I mean, considering the weight and the size, it was amazing. And then got pretty close, and then they weren't making any sound, so they were just watching us. And this individual. So I told my nephew, I said, okay, when we put out audio traps earlier, do you remember that there was this area where you could see all the way down to the creek bed, and there was no trees or brush in there? He said, yeah. And I said, let's walk back towards the car. And I said, and if I say now, I said, turn and look back down that area. So he turned, I said, now, and because I heard a little snap, and he turned, he looked down that area, and he said, 12 years old, he's been out actually officially squatching for 50 minutes. He says, yep, there it is. I said, what's it doing? He says, looking at me. I said, give me the scope. He hands me the night vision scope, and I put it up to my eye, and just in time to see this female subject. And everybody always asks me, how do you know it was a female?
The same way you know that a female is a female in
Yeah.
any other culture.
And she's taking one more step before she goes behind this tree. So I could kind of see a left view, profile view of her as she took this last step behind the tree and went behind this tree. But then all of a sudden, her hand came out on the side of the tree, and you could see this hand in the on the side of the tree up there. And I'll explain why she did this. We figured it out later, but for 3 minutes, she kept her hand on the side of this tree. So we're looking through it with night vision from 30 feet away. Okay. So I can see hair hanging off the bottom of her hand here, mm-hmm. and the hair hanging on the forearm, hanging down. Light breeze, the hair is kind of moving a little bit. The reflection of the infrared light off her fingernails, which her fingers were probably, like hot dog sized. Okay.
Well, 30 feet's not really that far when you think about it. That's about 2 times my bedroom.
Right. And the scope had a slight, magnification as well. So pretty darn close. But yeah. Then pretty soon she took her hand off the tree, and then we couldn't see her anymore, but she was still there. But the hand came off the tree. And so then we sat down and I tried to talk. People have always told me to sing to them, if you're trying to, so I tried all kinds of things, now I know, just speak English, that they'll understand you. But it's, and if you're calm and you don't freak out and start shooting into the darkness or doing crazy stuff, they're going to reflect that same amount of interest in you as well. But obviously, if you start getting an uncomfortable feeling, move on, because they're either tired of you or they're worried about maybe some of their other family members. So
there is another theory out there about communication with Bigfoot, is that it's telepathic, and the Ames team, we all know who they are, Mountain Monsters.
Yep.
They talked about that in, out there in Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia area. Is that a common theory, that they basically read your mind?
So I hadn't, my jury was out. I didn't have any data points like we were talking about to confirm or deny that until I was in that area just south of Alton and near Edwardsville. And it was during that in 2019 when there was all the flooding in that area. And the areas I wanted to go into were actually flooded. So I couldn't get in there at night. And so I pulled up and I parked outside of them. And near Edwardsville, I actually just stood out there and I thought to myself, I was going to make a call into the woods there. But then I decided, you know what, I'm going to try something. So I just stood there and I thought to myself, I didn't speak. I didn't make a sound. I just, pulled up, got out of the car, walked up to the front bumper, faced the woods. And I thought to myself, if you're in there, knock for me. Okay. That's all I thought. And within a minute, a tree knot came out of the woods. So, if that was an isolated case, I would have said, okay, that's a real wacky coincidence. But then I drove up towards, closer to Alton, and I went to a different area and I did the same thing, and I was able to repeat it within an hour of doing it down in Edwardsville. So, I would say yes, based on that evidence, in that experience. And if you had asked me, a week prior to that, I would have said, I couldn't tell you one way or the other. I really never discount any theories that people have, because, there's always some level or grain of truth or of an experience that someone had, and you can't discount somebody's experience.
No. Only thing you can do is, say you don't believe them only because of the fact that you weren't there. That's usually the case in most abnormal, paranormal, supernatural sightings, is that people don't believe them because they weren't there to witness it.
Correct.
So does that mean that I don't believe it happened? Probably not. But I can, like on Bigfoot, you guys probably spend a lot of time debunking what you see as well.
Oh.
I don't think that you believe everything you see in the woods is Bigfoot related.
I am my worst critic. If I walk out in the woods, I never, I hear something. Oh, it's got to be Bigfoot. No.
There are some people out there, though. You have to admit, there are people out there. Some people related to finding Bigfoot.
Yes.
Everything was Bigfoot, and they never questioned it. And I'm sitting there going, I mean, I'm still trying to figure, the biggest thing that made me not believe Bigfoot existed was that when one of them said, porcupines is the reason why we don't find Bigfoot bones. And I've had to pull this up online a few times to prove it to people that this was actually said. And it was actually said that it was porcupines. And I'm like, okay, well, porcupines are herbivores. They're not carnivores, but they are hoarders, which is a whole different problem. But I don't see them pulling back bones of, just the top of a Bigfoot leg would be at least 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet. A porcupine can't carry something that big.
No, they are very, at least from other people I've talked to, and my experience. Now, I always tell people I've never seen a bear skeleton. I've probably hiked 2,000 miles in wilderness areas of Arizona, and Arizona has 15,000 black bears at least, and I've never seen a black bear skeleton.
Well, you figure they have a place where they go to die,
right?
And, unless you know where their caves are,
and the forest is very capable of reducing, within months, within a month of reducing that carcass to nothing. But I do believe that Bigfoot, very much like us, I think they bury their dead.
And like you said, the forest reclaims everything.
Yep.
When the Bible says ashes to ashes, dust to dust, it goes for the same for that. So they die in an area where there's I'm going to say this, a buttload of kudzu. You're not going to find it. Kudzu is going to eat it up.
Yep.
And I know that it's a plant, people, but it will still, that's what it does.
If we have anything on this planet that's close to Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, it's kudzu.
Thank you, Japan.
Yeah.
And it's not helping with erosion like they said it would.
No.
Whole different problem.
Well, that's the same thing. I don't know if you realize this, but out, certainly in the plains area, everybody says, oh, the tumbleweeds rolling past and everything. But those tumbleweeds are actually imported from Russia. They're Russian thistles. And they actually were brought out in order to control erosion as well. But
I hate those things. They've done some damage to our car coming across 40.
That's one of my favorite stories. Was back in, unfortunately for the guy, but he was driving from Tucson to Phoenix, and apparently a extremely large. So some of these, tumbleweeds can get up to like 6-7 feet in diameter, right? And when they do, they have really incredibly woody trunks. Well, if they're rolling, that means the wind's broken them off because they've died and they're spreading their seeds. That's how they spread their seeds, is by rolling.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy hit like a extremely large tumbleweed coming up from Tucson. The trunk of it actually wedged up in behind the rear axle, and because it was dragging on the ground, it actually caught on fire, caught the fuel line on fire, blew up the car.
Dang.
So I said, that was, tumbleweed killed somebody.
Well, the thing is not only can that, people don't even think about armadillos that they roll up and then they'll jump up.
Yeah.
And they may be under your car when they do that. We actually had a horrible story. A friend of ours came down to Alabama to see us. We had rented a house down there. They came from southern Missouri. They hit an armadillo, tore up their car.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. So
I saw one last night. I didn't hit him though, but
well, they're all the way up into Iowa now.
Wow.
And people will look at you and go, "Yep, it's got an armadillo under the front porch."
Yeah, there was a movie I saw the other day, and it was all based in Arizona and had saguaro cactuses and everything, and then they had an armadillo run by, and I'm like, we don't have armadillos in Arizona,
Unless they fell off a truck or a train.
Yeah.
It's the only way. That's how they got here.
Yeah.
So, but where you're at now?
Oh yeah, Texas.
They're like rodents. Yeah.
Right outside my hotel here. It's like, oh, is that a cat? Oh no, that's an armadillo running by.
So we're talking about strange creatures now. And do Bigfoot have a smell? Have you ever smelled a Bigfoot?
So that's a really good question. So for the most part, especially, so here I was 30 feet away from one, right? Absolutely no smell whatsoever. I hadn't bought into the smell theory until I was on Long Island, and I missed seeing the one on Long Island by seconds. I mean, I could hear it running. By the time I ran up this hill from this kind of gravel quarry that was in the county park there, I got up to the top of the hill, and I could hear it crashing down into this next little valley or depression area, and it was really thick brush in there, but it ran down in there. But where it had run was a scent. There was a path about 20 feet wide that was the worst smell ever. I told people that it smelled like a combination of grass clippings with like grass clippings that were maybe 2-3 days old in your trash can, mixed with about week-old roadkill and summer porta potty. Okay, I walked into it. I almost threw up because it was so vile, but I walked through it. I kind of hustled and walked out of it. I was like, oh, like fresh air, right? But then I'm like, wait a minute, I have to figure out what this exactly smells like. So I walked back into it again, just so you
can remember it forever and ever, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'll never forget it. But so I walked out of the scent area, and I kind of, set down into the depression where I knew it still was. I said, boy, you really stink today, or something like that, and it started throwing acorns out of the bottom up the hill at me.
Well, just be happy it wasn't throwing something soft and mushy at you.
Yeah. So
see, there's a bright side to everything.
Yeah. So there was that time. So when I say that I've had 12 sightings, I don't count stuff like that. I mean,
because
they're very close. I can't see them, but they're there and they're interacting with me at a level. But the one that really surprised me, and it wasn't a sighting either, but on this weekend, it was a friend of mine and myself were up on the Mogollon Rim in Arizona. Earlier in the day, we had gone down this old logging road that kind of dead ended at this far end, and it was kind of difficult to get back in there. There was tree falls and other things that we had to kind of navigate around with the vehicle. But we get all the way down to the end, and as we parked down at the end, we decided we were going to have lunch down there since we had brought the food with us. So he decided to walk a little further down this ridge line down into Turkey Creek, which is, we were in the area right near where Travis was taken. And all of a sudden, as I'm standing there by the vehicle, it felt like an instant earthquake, right? The whole ground just shook, and it was close, and I could hear a couple of branches snapped right before this big impact hit, shook the ground. So I ran around inside the car, and I'm looking, and I see the top of this 80-foot tall tree just doing this, right? So I ran over towards that tree that we had just driven past 5 minutes earlier, and right at the bottom, there's this one giant footprint that was probably about 6-8 inches down into the ground, just one print. And so it had been up in this tree as we drove past, but we didn't see it. And he jumped out of the tree and landed with that one, foot took off, right? So, but the ground had kind of poured in and collapsed into it, but it was fresh, that's what occurred from that. Well, later that afternoon, we're on the other side of the ridge going up the canyon there, and I've got the windows down, and I always have the windows down to hear if I hear any knocks or stuff as we're going, just cruising along really slow on this old logging road that actually doesn't even have a forest number on it, and all of a sudden I get the worst smell. It smelled like fresh poo, as if it was human poo, it was not deer, it wasn't elk, it wasn't bear, it was human. It smelled like human poo, but it was fresh. So I stopped the car. Well, first I looked at my friend and I said, "Was that you?" He goes, "No, I thought it was you." And I was like, "Oh, it wasn't me." I was like, so I got out of the car and it smelled, I kind of zeroed in on where the smell was coming from. So I started heading up the hill towards the smell. And as I did that, the smell moved. And I couldn't see the brush didn't move. I could see a good 50 feet in front of me. There wasn't any vegetation. Couldn't identify it. So I got back in the car, and then by that time it dissipated. And I was like, okay, it moved on. So we were joking. We called whoever this individual was, we called them Dingleberry. Okay. So I hopped back in the car, and we go about a half mile further up this road until there's this giant meadow. And the meadow, one direction you could probably see, 300 feet one direction, and you could see about 100 feet on either side of the meadow. So I parked in the middle, and we sat down in the middle of the field and just sat there. And pretty soon, here comes the smell. And it circled around us, but you could not, in order for it to circle around us, it would have had to cross that area that was 300 feet of thing, but the smell stayed consistent. I can't explain it, but it was bad. We we joke about the Dingleberry experience, but
there could have been multiple Dingleberries out there.
There could have been. That could
be how I got all the way around you, that they all stunk. They all had something horrible for dinner. Yeah, and I was sharing with you.
That would have been, if I had seen it, that would have been my fourth sighting in this canyon. And, and like I said, all the other ones prior to that hadn't stunk at all. So I don't know.
Well, we got a couple more questions here. Gary asks, does the flash of your camera make them leave?
Especially at night, if you're taking a flash photo of them at night, they, I don't think they like that very much because they can see incredibly well at night. They have great vision at night. I have one of my blogs that I wrote on Sharon's website, ghosthuntingtheories.com. There's a couple theories I have about their eye shine. Now, people always say, "Oh, they have eye shine." I was taking a picture of them and I saw a white light, or I saw a green light, or reflected back at me. Well, or I was shining my flashlight into the woods and I saw these eyes. Okay, so what I'm talking about is not reflective eye shine. I'm talking about a natural something that bioluminescence property. And my theory, at least, is that they have a third eyelid. We have the remnants of a third eyelid, If you look in the corner of your eye, you see this little kind of crumpled up piece of skin there. Well, we don't use them anymore because we don't run through the brush like we used to, a million years ago. So, if you have something that's night vision type of eyes that you can see very well at night, to be able to glow your eyes, so I've seen it twice where this eye glow has come out and it's red, and in fact it illuminated the leaves around its face. I mean,
so it gave off its own light.
Right. We weren't shining lights. There was no lights at all. There was starlight. There was no moon. So why are there two red lights? and it really wasn't just red. It was like went from red to orange a little bit and yellow, but it was a very natural light. And
so they have really huge pupils.
Right. Well, but if you have night vision, that wouldn't, I can't see how you could like shine a light into something that has night vision and, you'd blind yourself. Right. So the only thing I could think of is that they have this third eyelid and the third eyelid skin can bioluminesce. That's my only explanation. Like I said, I'm taking 2 data points that I have where I witnessed something in complete total darkness and I can't explain it, and trying to explain it. I mean, if somebody has another explanation or an idea, I am certainly all ears to hear about it. But because that's how we learn, right?
So we have another question from Mike Roberts. He asks, where is the best place to go look for Bigfoot?
Well, if you have some woods in your backyard, that's probably a good place to start. But there's 3 requirements, right? They need to have some level of water. It doesn't have to be in that area that they're in. It can be nearby. But if there's a food source and if there's cover, obviously not a high amount of traffic. You can have, like in these areas I went to, they're county parks and forest preserves. There's hiking trails, there's biking trails through there. People ride horses through there. There's traffic through there. It's not a tremendous amount of traffic, but the areas that I found the stuff in, it was lesser traffic, but there was still plenty of cover where they could, for the most part, humans aren't going to go traipsing off into thick brush where there's poison ivy and poison oak, right? So
not intentionally anyway.
We like to stick to the trails, it's when I see the stuff that branches off that I go, yeah, okay, here's the main trail, well traveled. I'm looking down on the ground, I can see different. Okay, yep, that looks like, probably a woman's foot here. This is a guy. This guy is wearing. And that's another trick is, you'll find people wearing those running shoes that have the toes in them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be. I've seen Bigfooters get tricked by those sometimes.
I hate to say it, but those look uncomfortable. I've had toe socks before, and they just make your foot so thick that it's just hard to wear. I'd much rather just go barefoot.
Yeah, that's just a recipe for toe jam, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could see it being a recipe for ingrown toenails.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I said, they don't look comfortable. No. And of course, this is coming from, almost all my shoes are slip-on. Yep. You'll never mistake my shoes for Bigfoot. At least not at size 7.
But yeah, so if to answer the question, if you have an area that has really good cover, has a water source nearby and a food source. So, and they will if the only food source is dumpster diving, they'll, in an urban area, they'll dumpster dive. The ones on Long Island, they dumpster dive, but they didn't do that for food. They actually did it for empty water bottles. And I couldn't figure out, because there was no water source in this park, I couldn't figure out why I'd find piles of empty water bottles or half-filled water bottles it's just a trash pile, and if it was a vagrant that was living in the woods, you would think that there'd be some food wrappers and other thing, but it was just water bottles only. And I'd find them, sometimes I'd find the water bottles completely empty, and then sometimes I'd find some of them half filled or filled, the same bottles that were empty a little while before. And I thought to myself, how is this happening? Well, the woods bordered up to a corporate centers, and those corporate centers had lawns that went right up to the woods, and they were filling the water bottles from the sprinkler systems when they turned on at night.
I was going to say, because those corporate buildings always have really nice sprinklers, and they also have water on the outside of the building.
Yep. Well, it was the funniest event that happened out on Long Island was when it was like early January, and it was really cold. It was like 5 degrees out, and I didn't want to miss putting out apples, but I worked really late that night, so I went to the hotel. I grabbed some apples, came back out to the woods. I went to go walk into the woods. There's snow on the ground. The wind's whipping. So I don't know what the wind chill was in the negatives. And I start walking into the dark woods, and, in the darkness, this big tree branch breaks, just not even like 50 feet from me. So I stopped, and I thought, do I go in? What do I do? So I just turned and I just held the apples up, and I said, "These are for you." And I just rolled them down the path into the woods, and I left. Mm-hmm. Well, I went back, got in the car, and I drove back through the industrial park and back over to the hotel. So the hotel was nearby, and in between these industrial parks, there was actually a swath of kind of natural woods that separated the buildings and their parking lots.
Yeah, natural areas.
Yeah, like a natural area. So, but that natural area went all the way up to the road, and then the hotel was actually on the other side of the road. Well, the next morning I come out to the parking lot of the hotel, in the hotel, and there's a polished rock sitting right on the driver's side of my car on the roof. Mm. So it thanked me for the apples I threw in there the night before and but came across sometime in the night, came into the parking lot of the Marriott and actually left a rock on the.
That's when you go, that there's cameras.
Yeah.
But you don't know what time of the night or which camera might have caught it. And you don't want to go back in there and say, "Excuse me.
I found this rock on my car. Can you tell me?
Yeah.
Can I see all your security cameras?"
Yeah. And they're going to just look at you and go, I think we're packing your stuff up while you're gone today.
Yeah.
You'll have to find a new hotel.
That's right.
So, I can see that happening. Yeah. Equipment for hunting Bigfoot. What is the most important pieces of equipment to hunt for Bigfoot?
Your ears. Your ears and just your senses. Honestly, I mean the cameras. They have an aversion to cameras. If I put up years ago, I put up game cameras around campsite. Mm-hmm. They never came into camp. I took them down. They come into camp. They know.
Do you think that they make sound and they can hear it?
I think they can hear it. I've been in quiet rooms and I've got really good hearing, and I can hear just a very high electronic
whine
sound. Yeah, but I think I'm pretty sure they can hear it, and they understand cameras. They know that it's like an eyeball, and they don't want to be seen.
They can see the red light.
Yeah. They can absolutely see the infrared. There's no doubt.
So I don't know if people are even thinking about that. I want to know why every picture's blurry, but like I said, I figure that's because they're going so fast, and it doesn't. Most of these cameras that are catching this stuff,
and not only that, but those cameras are underneath the canopy in the woods,
mm-hmm.
so it's dimmer light in there. It's not like wide open and look at this, it's perfect. Somebody's like, look at this great shot of I got this picture of this deer or whatever. Yeah, that's because the deer stood still out in a meadow in perfect sunlight with sun shining down on it. And if you tried to take a picture of any other animal underneath the tree covered canopy and they're running at 30 miles an hour.
Well, and you also have to add in that most of these are motion sensor, so they don't even come on until it's almost all the way past.
Correct. Yep.
Especially if it's something fast. I mean, that's why they're not catching, bears when they're running fast. They're not catching, deer when they're running. They might catch their tail, or, with the mountain lions and stuff, they might catch their tail, not the front part of their body. So that's one of the things that
absolutely
I think that we need to keep in mind when we're looking at these blurry pictures. I just don't know why people want to blow them up and make them all grainy, and then you're going, I don't see anything.
Yeah.
And I'm horrible. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, I'm horrible at pictures. I don't see faces unless it's a person.
Right.
Or what I'm supposed to be looking for, like a cat, a dog, an animal. I see those, but don't tell me that there's a face in there and have me try to point it out, because I ain't gonna find it.
Yeah, I'll post the photo from the Chicago sighting, and you'll see the face in there. And I've never been one to circle dark shadows or anything in bushes and all that stuff. It's like either I see it or I don't. But since I knew I had one treed, since I had photos from two different other directions, and this was a capture from the video that I took, and it's like, it's looking right. I mean, when I finally saw it on the video, I was stunned, because I'm like, oh my God, it was looking right at me and I didn't see it, at the time.
Some of your pictures that I saw in the blog. So guys, go out there and check out ghosthuntingtheories.com, and you'll find all the blogs out there. He's got some really good pictures associated with his blogs. Bad news is this is almost over.
Yeah.
We got about 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you, where can everybody find you?
So you can find me on Facebook. Certainly just add me if you want, reach out. I'm always interested to answer questions, and people are interested in it. Like I said, I never expected to be in the position where I is, and I've never done any speaking engagements on things, but I really want people to understand and to know that they're out there and they're not our enemy. They're not, there's some of these places that are just like, they demonize them. And
hunting Bigfoot. That's why I said, why would we want to find Bigfoot if he's going to kill us? The Alaskan Bigfoot.
Yeah. If I'm going out into the woods with, if I came to your house with ill intent to, harm you or your family, right? What would you do? You'd shoot my, you'd shoot me, right?
Pellets in your ass.
Or in this case, since they don't have guns, they'll throw a big rock at you, or they'll, So if you go out there with the intent that you're going to, you're going to hurt them or a family member, then expect to be retaliated like that. So if you go out there and with an understanding and inquisitive, and be curious about them, they're going to be just as curious about you as well. So
we have one more question. Do you have any books? Mike asks.
I don't, but I am planning on editing all of my blogs into a book form and kind of tying that all together. So I don't know when that would be. Probably later this year or next. So. But,
if you're traveling a lot, you got time in the hotel room.
I do. That's why I always tell my wife, I'm either out in the woods or I'm doing, here I am.
Yeah. So. As you can hear, she's getting pissed.
That was like the alarm.
Yeah, it did sound like one.
Yeah, what it is she took this marker. She has
been doing good until now.
She decided to draw on her face. I'm surprised it still has color in it, because she sucked all the red out of one of the markers.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah, but again, they were supposed to have left. As you can see, she never left this room.
Yep.
So
it was too interesting.
Oh, she loves her grandma.
Yeah.
And this is the most she's played with grandpa, so this has been really good. So So everyone, thank you so much for listening and being part of tonight's show and for all your questions. Join us tomorrow night at 5:00 Central for Paranormal Nation Radio Not So Normal, when our guest is going to be Rocky Stucci. You guys will really like him. He's both paranormal and political, so you guys will love him. And then next Monday, my guest is Second Sight Paranormal out of the Panhandle area of Florida. And Denise getting to interview people where she's moving to to find out what's going on where I'm moving to. So join us then. And I hope everybody had a great night. If you have any more questions for Karl, please contact Karl or me, and we'll get you the answers to your questions. And Amanda Jane Norton, I will contact you on your question. And thank you guys all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
It's got soap on it. I don't know if you